Hey guys, welcome to Dogforge. My name's Paul, and this is our Tasha's Cauldron of Everything series. Do you want more D&D and Tasha's content? Then hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. Every subscriber helps to build and support our channel, and we are extremely grateful for each and every one of you. But now it's time to light some candles, grab your Ouija board, and feel that creepy atmosphere. Today we're taking a look at the Phantom Rogue. So the general concept behind this rogue is that through the act of taking life over your career, you have become closer to death. This allows you to become shrouded in negative energy and be able to manipulate spirits. Now they give some examples of what kind of settings and roles these kinds of rogues can give in the fluff text, but I'll let you pause and read that at your own leisure. Let's get straight into it. And first of all, we do have our artwork. I feel this is pretty good artwork because it clearly shows that we have, our rogue being influenced or aided. They don't look very helpful to me, but they could be, by some goblin spirits that they have presumably killed earlier on. And with that, we will get straight into this. As we get our roguish archetype at 3rd level, we get the following features at 3rd. First off is Whispers of the Dead, and this is stealing knowledge from those that have died around you, essentially. Whenever you finish a short or long rest, you gain one skill or tool proficiency that you don't have, and you keep this proficiency until you use this feature again to choose a different proficiency. So straight off the bat, we have a skill monkey rogue that is very versatile. You can use this to plug in a gap in your character concept, or perhaps fill in a gap in the party's proficiencies, or rise to the challenge of something coming up in the near future. Being able to trigger this on a short rest, not just a long rest, makes this actually surprisingly usable to be reactionary to your situation, since you only need an hour typically for a short rest, but however there are things like catnap, and at higher levels the Genie Warlock can also replicate catnap in a certain way. So there are definitely ways that you can use this in a more short time frame fashion. I'm a big fan of this feature, and to be perfectly honest, I think it's the stronger half of 3rd level. Now the other side of 3rd level is the damage bump that this rogue is going to get, and that is Wails from the Grave. Now this rogue bucks the trend a little bit, and so does the Soul Knife, to be honest, in that rogues usually get some kind of interaction with sneak attack, but it is more commonly giving additional triggers, additional ways to proc sneak attack damage. However, this allows you to apply sneak attack damage in a different way to an additional target. Immediately after you deal your sneak attack damage to a creature on your turn, you can target a second creature that you can see within 30 feet of the first creature. Roll half the number of sneak attack dice for your level, and then the second creature takes necrotic damage equal to that roll total. The justification for this is Wails of the Dead surrounding them for the moment. You can use this ability at number times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses at a long rest. Now, I feel like a lot of people are going to think this is a really good ability. And for Nova damage, so to speak, when you are facing multiple opponents, this is certainly useful. However, in my estimation, when you get this, and for the foreseeable future after you get it, this is actually very mediocre and blah. So first of all, we have a restriction in here. Now this is only applicable when you deal sneak attack damage on your turn. And in case some of you are unfamiliar, one of the common ways that a rogue seeks additional damage is trying to proc sneak attack off turn. This can be through attacks of opportunity, perhaps readying an attack through something like haste, Battlemaster using commanding strike. Whatever the means, that is a common way for a rogue to bump up their damage significantly. This does not apply to that kind of damage, so that's one limiting factor to begin with. Secondly, the amount of damage this gives you is very meager, to say the least. When you get this ability, you will have 2d6 sneak, which means that your Wails from the Grave will do 1d6 necrotic damage. That's an average of 3.5 damage, and that's kind of pathetic even for the level you get it. Now this would be not quite as bad if you could use this more. However, you can only use this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest, and that's really the sticking point here. When you get this feature, and for the level afterwards, you will only be able to use this twice per day. That doesn't feel good. I mean, when you can only do your key thing twice per day, you kind of start feeling like the Arcane Archer, but even they can do their thing more than you can. So, I feel like this gains momentum and potency at an alarming rate at later levels, but starting off, this is certainly not my cup of tea. However, jumping fast forwards to 9th level, we get Tokens of the Departed. Now, how this works is basically when a creature dies within 30 feet of you, you open your free hand. Now that is important. You can only do this with a free hand, which means that as of 9th level, this rogue is no longer going to be useful for 2-weapon fighting, and you can kiss sweet goodbye to any shield proficiency you might have got from somewhere. So, as a reaction when somebody dies within 30 feet of you, you can open your free hand and cause a tiny trinket to appear there as you rip a piece of their soul away. I'm not saying that this is how you play Voldemort Rogue Edition, but it's kind of looking like how you play Voldemort Rogue Edition. The DM determines the trinket's form, or you can roll on the trinkets table in the player's handbook to generate it. Now, if you'd like to guess how many soul trinkets you can have at any one time, if you want a proficiency bonus because this is Tasha's, good for you, and you're clearly a fan of the channel. You can't create additional trinkets whilst you are at your maximum, however there is no limit on how many trinkets you can make. As in, throughout the day, this is pretty much non-stop, and that is something that I like straight away. Now you have 3 uses for your trinkets. The first is a passive benefit that you gain as long as you have at least a single trinket on your person, and that is you gain advantage on death saving throws, which you hopefully won't need to use, and constitution saving throws, which can be useful as you steal vitality from the soul. The second one is much nicer. When you deal sneak attack damage on your turn, you can destroy one of the soul trinkets on your person and immediately use Wails from the Grave without expending a use of that feature. Now this is much better. So at this point your proficiency bonus is 4, that means you have 4 trinkets and you also have 4 uses of Wails from the Grave. Your sneak attack damage is 5d6, which means that rounded up your Wail from the Grave damage is 3d6 necrotic. Being able to use this ability, potentially an infinite number of times per day, because again remember, whilst you are limited to 4 trinkets at a time, there is no actual restriction on how many times you can create a trinket as long as you have empty slots, so to speak, to receive it. That makes Wails from the Grave very, very appealing and much more usable in my opinion. It still has the glaring weakness of, hey, if you fight one single big tough guy, your ability is entirely useless for the time being, but every little helps. Finally, as an action, you can destroy one of your soul trinkets no matter where it's located, so even if you've left it behind, and that is something that you can do. You can leave perhaps one soul trinket behind in your base of operations, and then when out on an adventure you can reclaim knowledge from that soul. So the spirit appears to you when you destroy the trinket and answers in a language that it knew in life. That can be a sticking point, but you should be prepared for that. This is 9th level. Under no obligation does it have to be truthful, and it answers as concisely as possible, eager to be free. The spirit knows only what it knew in life as determined by the DM, so you can treat this kind of like a roguish speak with dead, and it's a nice way to gain information, especially at this level. 9th level is a huge win for me, as the soul trinkets really ramp up your Wails from the Grave, and in general add a lot more to the class. The fact that it's not restricted at all, I feel it kind of bucks the proficiency limit trend, but I think it's also very applicable seeing as this is meant to be about death, and there's no real limit to the amount of death that you can deal in a day as long as you are not amongst that number. Moving on to 13th level, and we get Ghost Walk. You phase partially into the realm of the dead, becoming like a ghost. So as a bonus action you become spectral, and whilst you are in that form you have a flying and hover ability of 10 feet. Attack rolls have disadvantage against you. You can also move through creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but you take 1d10 force damage if you end your turn inside a creature or object. You can stay in this form for 10 minutes or until you end it as a bonus action. To use the feature again, you must finish a long rest or destroy one of your soul trinkets as part of the bonus action used to activate it. Meaning that again, this feature is potentially unlimited as long as you keep killing and creating soul trinkets. So, this is a particularly good feature. I would normally associate abilities like this as out of combat or more combat reprieve, as you typically end up on the astral plane and unable to actually affect combat, kind of how Blink works. But this specifically does not do that. You can still attack, you can still participate in the combat, you even have the versatility of some degree of a fly speed and moving through objects, making hit and run tactics particularly interesting, especially if you dash with your cutting action. So this is a pretty great ability, and I think it fits the whole ghostly phantom feel of it things really well. Jumping forth to our 17th level and final feature, Death's Friend. Your association with death has become so close that you gain the following benefits. And no, you do not get some cool leather duster, although that would have been nice. When you use your Wails from the Grave, you can deal the necrotic damage to both the first and the second creature, and at the end of a long rest, a soul trinket appears in your hand if you don't have any soul trinkets, as the spirits of the dead are drawn to you. Now, this ability straight away highlights something that I don't think I've mentioned thus far in the video, and that is that soul trinkets don't have an expiry. I mean, like, there's no limit here. There's a limit on how many you can have, but there's not a limit on how many you can create as long as you have empty, again, slots, so to speak. And there's no limit on how long they last. So you can feasibly start an adventure with a full roster of soul tokens, or soul trinkets, and then from 17th level you will always start the day with at least one soul trinket, which means that you have multiple uses of some of your other abilities, besides also, you know, being able to use... No, this is kind of sticky. Being able to use your gather information ability. One thing that I foresee being a pain in the neck for DMs, and I think that they didn't think about this because it's a 17th level feature. If you crush the soul trinket you randomly get at the beginning of the day, you have no idea of knowing what that spirit is, what they could know, and what languages they speak to communicate with you. And I'm going to go out there and say that the DM probably won't know, and if you play a campaign this high, they won't think about it until you try and use that trinket to do that. And then everyone kind of goes, oh. That's a hole that really needs filling in. I feel like that should have been addressed in some way, even if it was just letting the DM know. And that's the important part here. As with most things, if the DM has prior notice, then they can address this issue. They can have a table that they make themselves of random souls. Or they can just pull something out from where the sun doesn't shine and say this is your soul and this is what they know. So knowledge is power, and hopefully that has helped you. Now, that's been the entirety of the Phantom Rogue, and my general impressions are, this is a fun rogue. This is a thematic rogue, but I would not choose to play this rogue over pretty much most of the other rogues in the game unless I was playing in a game that started close to or at 9th level. Before you get your soul trinkets, this just isn't worth it to me. The amount of usage you get from Wail from the Grave and the amount of damage it does just is too lackluster, and to be honest, if you're going to go for a skill monkey build, I would probably hit 3rd or 4th level in this and then jump to Bard anyway. It's nice in that this subclass does not have a secondary stat that it's dependent on. Tasha's has moved away from that, it appears, for their rogues, which is a little confusing and makes multiclassing into their rogues a lot more appealing. But that's just what I think. I think this is a fantastic late tier 2 and then tier 3 and 4 rogue. If you're playing those games, or you're playing a one-shot that takes part in those levels, I would strongly advocate that you try this rogue. However, if you're going to be playing from 3rd up, or even from 1st level and then getting to 3rd, I would strongly just please consider how much you can use your abilities, and then decide if that is still appealing to you, and maybe buy in a little bit more to the flavour than you would another subclass. If you do that, then I think that this will still be a rewarding subclass even at those lower levels. But hey, that's just what I think. What do you think about the Phantom Rogue? Let us know in the comments down below, and hey, whilst you're down there, hit that like button if you liked this video. If you want more Tasha's and 5e content, then hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. And if you want your next D&D fix straight away, then smash one of those boxes appearing on screen right now as if by magic. My name's Paul, and I'll see you next time at the Forge.